Hello and welcome to the Barron's Game Room, everyone. I'm Aaron as always, and sorry, I know it's been like 3 weeks since I made a video. My family's home more for the summer right now, and when they're around on my video shooting days, I just kind of don't want to make a video. But I've got some time to myself, so let's get on with this. I said in one of my old videos, the video on the Clue card game, that I'd become kind of obsessed with collecting these spin-offs and variants of classic board games. I am nowhere near complete with this collection, but this is what I have managed to gather so far. Now, you can see that these are mostly card games. There's also a series of like dice games from a lot of these that I want to get to that is on my list, and then there's those Rivals editions. For those of you that haven't heard about these Rivals editions, they're still board games, but they're completely focused on just 2 players. They tend to have like streamlined rules and all that. And even though I am lucky enough to have a gaming group that gets together about once a week, look, I've got a problem, y'all, and I need my gaming fix more than once a week. So, me and my wife do a lot of gaming together, and these Rivals editions have been kind of fun, interesting things to sit down and play. I'll do longer, more in-depth videos probably on each of these later, but I'll just kind of do quick overviews of the groups here. Since I was already talking about them, might as well continue talking about these Rivals edition games. Now, you can see that I've got Sorry and I've got Monopoly, but I think there's 3 other games of this as well. I believe there's also Clue, Game of Life, and Payday, which is a game I'm not really familiar with. I've seen it around, but I think it's just a little too new for me. Not quite that nostalgia hit that the other ones have. My experience with these games so far has been pretty positive. They changed the rules a little bit so they can speed up the game, but it always feels good like the regular. I think Monopoly is the biggest change so far, but we have a good time with it. In fact, we actually did a fun thing once where I played against my wife in the Monopoly game and my daughter in the Sorry game at the same time. It was kind of a fun night. But hey, let's bring in some of this other stuff now too. Obviously, I've already talked about the Clue card game. This is quite a bit of great fun. Honestly, this one, I think it's better than regular Battleship. These 3 were part of a kind of set they released recently. There's a 4th one that's Guess Who, but it's pointless because it's literally just Guess Who, but with cards. It has a cool little clicky-clack machine. Scrabble Slam is like a fast-paced one where you're slamming down cards in the middle, changing up the word on the table. I have this old version of it, and like right after I got it, they released a newer one, which kind of makes me mad. Sorry Revenge, probably one of my least favorite here. It's a little similar to another game I have called Boomo, which I really like Boomo, except for this one you want to land on the right number instead of the other way. But yeah, and then I've got my big stack of Monopoly games I've got here. You can see I've got the most variety in these. In fact, as far as I can tell, there's still one more Monopoly card game out there from like the early 90s that's different than all of these ones. But in these real quick, Deal was probably the one that made me decide I really should start collecting all these, whereas Clue caught my attention first. Looking at these 2 together made me go, I think I really should start buying all these. I'm kind of interested in them. Bid is, well, it's a bidding one. So if you like the bidding stuff, you'll end up having a good time with that one. Deal's generally my preferred game out of all these. Empires here. This is an interesting one that was never really released. You can see it actually just came in some copies of Monopoly Empire. But it clearly looks like meant to be its own separate thing. It's just a pit ripoff. Yeah, so it's a lot of fun at first, but I've actually found games I like better. And this being our most recent one, I wasn't even fully aware of this one. This one's kind of just a Rummy clone, but it's the only one that still uses like paper money from the regular game and all that. And then there's, the Uno cards. I gotta say, guys, I was not prepared for the rabbit hole I went down for Uno games. I looked through, like, they easily, I think, have the most variable spin-offs or whatever. Maybe Monopoly beats them, but the problem with Monopoly is when you go to, like, look for lists like that, you find all of the licensed versions. Same for Uno, and it's so hard to dig through all those licensed versions for the, like, spin-off regular versions. And the one thing I think Uno definitely has all the other ones beyond is there's so many of these, like, toyetic spin-offs, these triple plays, these actions, these robos, that just have some kind of, like, device that sits on the table that sort of, like, adds to the gameplay, when they mostly just sort of add some random, like, oh no, I got a bajillion cards now. And I'm generally trying to avoid those because I've got limited space here. I don't need 87 toys that are as big as my head for frickin' Uno. But when you keep it to just the kind of card spin-offs and stuff like that, I think I actually might have almost all of them. I don't have Dare because I don't want Dare. And it's kind of on you if you consider something like Ono 99 or Phase 10 an Uno spin-off. I don't think they're their own games. These are the ones I have. Uno All Wild was, I think, the first one that made me think I wanted to get the Uno's like variants, because it's just such a weird one. You'd think it wouldn't work, and you know what? In a way, it kind of doesn't, but it also kind of, it's got some good fun to it. It's got a few tweaks to the rules. I would honestly barely call it Uno, because, you know, when there's no colors and stuff to it, it just doesn't quite feel the same, but it is a fun card game. Uno Flip, let me tell you this, good lord. There's Uno Flip, and then there's Uno Flip, which is what we have. And Uno Flip and Uno Flip are two different games entirely. Uno Flip came out in like the 70s, and it's like tiles and stuff like that. Whereas this is just double-sided cards. And it's just funny when you look into the history of all these, how some of these games have been re-released several times in different ways. Uno Flip's a really recent one, which just means some cards have like an extra effect you can do instead if you have like your little card ready. Dose is the first, real spin-off. I'm sure you guys have seen this one. When I play it, I like it. It's not something I immediately recognize as like a Uno spin-off, and I definitely would never call it an Uno replacement. If you were like, man, I only need one card game for my house, don't get Dose, get Uno. But if you need some of your cards to play, a little more variety, a little more math, Dose is a fun little game. Now, like I said earlier, there's still a lot more that I wanted that I'm trying to get. There are dice versions I really want of a bunch of these. Monopoly, Clue, and Sorry. I'll have like a recent trilogy of dice ones. There's Uno dice, which funny enough, there are 4 releases of Uno dice that play in different styles. It's ridiculous, guys. I said, these rabbit holes are nuts. There's even some other fun ones I'm looking into, like Uno Bingo, or there's a recent release of some roll and rights. I think Uno had one for that, and then they did the Phase 10 stuff as well. Might ignore that one. But yeah, I don't know. I can't really explain what I find so appealing about these. I think it's just the nostalgia factor on some level. These are all the simple games that we probably all grew up playing as kids, but they're just kind of better sometimes. It gives you the feel of some of those games without the slog of how long some of them can take, or having to deal with the fact that they can be relatively simplistic. And when you dive deeper into the board game hobby, sometimes going back to those old ones can be rough. If the nostalgia's not big enough for you, you just kind of recognize that these are kind of just bad games, or a little boring. So I think that's what these feel for me, is like, they give me that nostalgia itch since, oh man, yeah, I totally remember playing all these games and all that, and you still kind of get the feel, some of them more than others, while being a little more tight gameplay, a little faster gameplay, and so small doses of fun nostalgia. In general, I think I mostly recommend everything you've seen here. I'll probably do more in-depth videos on all of them later, so you can hear more about exactly how they're played. But yeah, if any of these look good to you guys, join me on the collection. I don't want to be the only weirdo doing this. In fact, if you guys already have some or ones I don't have, I'd love to hear about them. So, see you guys next time.